Okay, by now I'm sure you're well acquainted with the new Fortnite season. I mean, it's been all over the internet ever since it came out, and that's dragged multiple people back into the game, including myself. Not only that, but Epic has been reporting some major numbers ever since the season came out, and if you've been stuck under a rock for whatever reason, you might be asking, well, why is everybody talking about Fortnite all of a sudden? You know when Epic made a bad update back in Chapter 1, where they still kind of experimented with things without really thinking it through, like the planes from Chapter 1 Season 7.
The football anthem. What is a BR game?
The turbo building change, or when they constantly altered the map in Season X, people always complain about any update, and that includes me, or maybe even you to a certain extent. But you know how people used to say on Twitter, revert update, or go back, or something along those lines, you know, something that conveyed a message, that being, I don't like this. Please change back. You know, thinking that their voice actually mattered to a multi-billion-dollar company, okay? Well, wouldn't you know it, folks? These people's prayers have been finally answered because Epic, out of sheer desperation, decided to pull the one trump card they've had up their sleeves ever since the beginning of their game. And it is totally not a coincidence that they just so happened to release it at the time when the holiday seasons were coming around the corner, the interest for the game was dwindling, and Modern Warfare 3 was coming out a week later. No. Keep that out of your mind. They wiped it clean and made it OG. At first, I was a bit skeptical when going into this new season. I thought that they would probably only add back the old map, include some bullshit collaboration items, as well as keep some of the mechanics and add a new or existing broken item into the game without properly balancing it. You know, how they always used to do it. However, to my surprise, they actually made it how it was originally. Just a silly building game with a simple set of weapons and items and a simple map to navigate through. We're being sneaky.
Following granite.
Everybody, lab.
We have to pick on one big bush, one big bush. Do it
No, not one big bush. We're gonna
Form
go.
up, folks. Form up.
Alright, guys. Wait! Someone just drove past us! No rocket science bullshit mechanic that you have to learn, no reality augments that are completely broken. It is exactly how I envisioned the game to be, in its almost perfect state. And looking at the vaulted list made my jaw drop. Look how many items, weapons, and mechanics got vaulted. All for the purpose to get their old audience back. And as you can see, it worked. In addition, I promised myself that I wouldn't come back to the loop. However, knowing the circumstances, this is not a normal season anymore. The circumstances have definitely changed, and seemingly, my audience unanimously agrees that this video, while breaking the promise, is warranted. However, this does not mean I am coming back to the Fortnite community. This might just be a severe lapse in my judgment. Looking at it from a surface level, Epic has managed to successfully almost quadruple their player base seemingly over the course of a weekend. However, the more you look at it, the more you start to see the cracks in the shining armor that is Fortnite Season OG. And while they may have succeeded in gaining short-term relevance, will they be able to contain their new, or rather old audience? Be warned, there are a lot of hot takes coming your way about this video game, so if you are the type of person that cannot handle any opposing opinions to your beliefs, then you may wish to sit this video out. In addition, this video explores heavy terms like manipulation and persuasion, so viewers be advised to approach the information with an open mind and a thoughtful perspective. Today, we are going to embark on an excavation, if you will, full of manipulation, neglect, and commitment. So without stalling the video any longer, let's begin. Let's begin with the obvious critique of this season, the elephant in the room if you will. This season just lacks original content in a major way. Usually when a new season comes out, we get a new theme of the season, which can vary depending on what kind of torture Epic wants to put us through, some kind of location on the map, weapons, items, storyline, and more stuff. But this one just felt like a straight up callback to the original map, and sure it makes sense, it's just that there isn't really much original content, besides the small alterations to the map, such as adding zip lines, removing Happy Hamlet and Polar Peak from the ice biome, which was a really stupid move if you ask me. But okay, Epic, it kind of makes sense lore-wise, so I guess? No new weapons were added, only slight reworks to some of the items, such as grapplers getting a buff for some reason, llamas not moving to give it kind of the original feel, and many more small-scale changes. I do think that the ziplines were justified, since in Zero build it would be kind of impossible to really play without ziplines, considering how the terrain is built in Athena, which is the Chapter 1 map, which is good. For the most part, I do like these small-scale changes. However, and there is a big however, the problem is that without any original content, this entire season can feel pretty dull and stagnating. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, here are a couple of examples. While the Chapter 1 map may be fun to revisit, especially for a player like me who's spent almost half of his playtime on said chapter, the gameplay experience may become repetitive and or rather predictable. Since these players already know the map's layout, loot spawn locations, and various other strategies, once the player is done trying out things like rocket riding or making a sky base, or any old strategy that could put a twist to the game for the fun of it, the overall experience becomes dull very quickly. Even if the map is intended to change weekly, this season still remains highly predictable, since while I was making this script, the game has yet to transition to Chapter 1 Season 6, where I can already predict at the top of my head that notable features like the Loot Lake Island will provide excellent repositioning opportunities akin to a free launch pad for anyone approaching the island, or the introduction of the snow biome from Season 7, or the introduction of the pirate outposts. My point being, this entire season will become very, and I mean very predictable. The only way Epic could entirely refute this argument is by introducing a significant twist to the season, which would compromise its originality. An example of this would be the reintroduction of the snow biome. If you've been on Fortnite for a while, you've seen that they've only added Frosty Flights as a location, not including Polar Peak and Happy Hamlet, which, while being original, compromises the originality, which is why many people are kind of pissed off at this update. So you start to see a dilemma forming here. They either could do everything original or not, and either way, people will be unhappy. But amidst these anticipated changes lies a crucial factor: nostalgia. While nostalgia may have the power to initially reignite interest in Fortnite, as it did, mind you, the newly found player base may quickly or eventually find that the changes to the season will be minimal, potentially leading to consequences like a decline in the player base as the season progresses, despite the return of the Chapter 1 map, making it, again, repetitive and predictable. You start to see a pattern here. Another potential issue that emerges is for newer players who have never experienced Chapter 1, let alone have any nostalgic connection to that era of Fortnite. It seems that the developers centered their attention on a different player demographic, inadvertently leaving newcomers without a new, fresh experience. Instead of making new memories on a new map or anything of that sort, they will find themselves reliving a mere shell of what Chapter 1 once was. Now, let me be clear. While this point is less important than the last two, I would personally say that it is important to take into consideration the newer audience, since the game has been going on for, please excuse my language, 6 years now, Epic. Come on!
How do you do, fellow kids? What?
And the entire concept of seasons and chapters in Fortnite felt initially pitched as a period of time in Fortnite existing in that specific duration, never to make a return, ever again. So to see Epic just plop Chapter 1 into the game feels more like a marketing move, and personally, it leaves a bittersweet impression, at least for me. Again, the decision to reintroduce the Chapter 1 map might appeal to the nostalgia of Fortnite's earlier player base. It cannot be overlooked, however, that despite the seasonog's alterations, it will feel dull and stagnant for a portion of the player base, particularly for those who have been playing Fortnite consistently, and those who are looking for fresh and new experiences. So of course, you're probably wondering, well, Julian, do you not like the Chapter 1 map at all? Do you not like seasonog at all? Of course I do. No idiot in the world who has nostalgia for this map would ever think of saying otherwise. However, and there is a big however, when you look at it from a marketing standpoint, and less from Epic, I guess, just doing it out of their kindness of their own heart, then it seems like they are becoming desperate to maintain retention on their game. And there could be many reasons as to why, such as Epic laying off 16% of their workforce, increasing prices on V-Bucks due to inflation, or that's at least what they've been telling us in their blog post. Donald Mustard, the man, the myth, the legend, who is responsible for the majority of the Fortnite lore, retiring. You know, they released this whole mess at a point in time when it was the most financially viable to them. So to sit here and to say otherwise would be disingenuous. The only good things that came out of this season is this season's battle pass. I would say it's original in its own way, and it was something I actively encouraged in my previous review of Chapter 4 Season 1. It fits to the theme, and the skins are original to a certain extent. However, it's short, having only 7 pages rather than its standard 14, and that's because this season is only meant to last less than a month, which seems rather impractical in my personal opinion. Like what, you're gonna release OG Fortnite and only give us a month to say goodbye? If I had it my way, I would have prevented the map from coming back, but I'll get to that later in the video. In the case where the map is out and there is nothing I can do to stop it, I would probably extend the season to its usual duration of about 3 months, which gives us, the players, about 12 weeks to enjoy ourselves. And instead of having a week between each season from season 5 to season 10, we would have about 2.5 weeks for each season, which would let the OG players enjoy themselves with the new map for a bit, while at the same time letting the newer players get more accustomed to the current map, and obviously extend the battle pass. As mentioned earlier in the video, nostalgia has the power to reignite interest in the game, generating, for the most part, a powerful emotional response within the player base. With this in mind, you can certainly start to see how people are susceptible to Epic's manipulation. They've predominantly employed nostalgia as a marketing tool, aiming to resonate mostly with the original player base. And while the strategy may seem favorable on the surface for the original player base in Epic Games, its effectiveness is likely to diminish in the long run. But let's go back to the word manipulation. What does manipulation mean? Manipulation is best defined within the word manipulate, which has a lot of meanings depending on the context it could be used in, but in this instance, to manipulate means to control or influence individuals or a situation using clever and sometimes tricky methods. It could also mean using different strategies to guide others into a specific result, often taking advantage of how people think or feel. This is mostly prominent within Fortnite's item shop, more specifically bundled items and discounts. Bundling creates a perception of increased value for the customer. By offering multiple items together at a discounted price, players feel like they are going to get more for their money's worth, compared to buying each item separately. This also increases the chance of impulse buying, which basically is buying on a whim, impulsively, without really thinking it through. In addition, they use subliminal messaging like, it's back for an item or skin that hasn't been in the item shop for a while. Or they use wording like, collect this set, to subconsciously plant into the consumer's mind to buy this product. Not to mention that Fortnite, for the most part, is marketing to children, especially with their whole new Creative 2.0 stuff. They are turning their game into Roblox. Tactics like FOMO, while not directly being a manipulation tactic, rather a psychological motivator for things like the Battle Pass or collaborations as a whole, it certainly plays a role in making the consumer fear of missing out, and may be more motivated to spend more money or invest time into the game. But you might be wondering, what does this have to do with Fortnite Season OG? And trust me, I'll get to that. What if I told you that there are more layers to Epic's way of manipulating, or rather, persuading? See, have you ever heard of 3 modes of persuasion? I'm sure most of you are scratching your head since it isn't really often talked about. I personally barely remember going over it in secondary school, using Terry Crews's Old Spice commercials as an example.
Goodbye. Oh no!
Here, let me give you a quick history lesson. Back in ancient Greece, there was a man named Aristotle, a Greek philosopher who's most notable for his influential contributions to the Western philosophy, like logic, biology, and rhetoric, something we are going to touch on a bit more. Somewhere around the 4th century before the Common Era, Aristotle wrote a book simply called Rhetoric, which is what I would call a thesis on the art of persuasion and communication, among which he introduced the 3 modes of persuasion: pathos, ethos, and logos. Pathos, the Latin translation of emotion or emotional appeal, is meant to evoke a particular emotional response or reaction. The most common example of this being charity commercials, where they show you someone in need, particularly someone who doesn't have it as good as you, like a child in a poor country or a sad-looking dog in a dog shelter. You know, the commercials that just play on your heartstrings. They just want to make you hug your dog or appreciate how fortunate you've been in life.
What is wrong with you? Give them money! Give us money so we can give it to them! Do it now! Get off your couch and do it! Do it now!
Ethos, the Latin translation of ethics or ethical appeal, refers to the speaker's credibility. Imagine seeing a commercial where famous people like Marshmello, Travis Scott, or Kid Laroi say they love a product. Or think about YouTubers like MrBeast promoting a product in their video as a sponsorship. When you see that, it makes you subconsciously view the product in a better light. And that's exactly what I mean by ethos in advertising, using well-known and respected people to make you feel confident about a certain product. Logos, the Latin translation of reason or logic, involves using logical or evidence to persuade the audience. The best example I could give is some kind of commercial that includes some statistic, comparing some products, demonstrating them in a commercial. You know, sentences like, our soap removes 99% of all bacteria, our detergent cleans 30% more stains than our leading competitor, where they like show a side-by-side comparison. Logos is showing you reason or logic as to why you should be persuaded to something. Everything from traditional television commercials to various marketing campaigns, the art of persuasion, along with the three fundamental components, plays significant role in nearly every advertising commercial on Earth. Each company, without an exception, has employed at least one of these persuasive methods to endorse a product or service. In the case of Fortnite Season OG, it's no different. The primary appeal in this case is the audience's emotions, or pathos, since Epic was targeting the original audience of the game. Nostalgia often makes one feel emotional and sentimental feelings, which can influence the consumer's decision to purchase a product based on how much it makes them feel and the emotional connection it creates. In our case here, the product being Fortnite Season OG, and while you may argue that it is free, pathos can certainly encourage one to spend money on skins, backlinks, outfits, whatever, right? As well as pathos, ethos, while not being directly included, as Epic mainly plays on the audience's emotions, it could indirectly influence the company's credibility. If the company successfully taps into the audience's shared nostalgia, it could build trust and credibility by demonstrating an understanding of what the audience wants, needs, and what the original player base was longing for. In this sense, it's about aligning with the audience experiences, and it can indirectly enhance the brand's ethos. It builds that sort of trust where the player base feels like their prayers of bringing back Chapter 1 have finally been answered, putting the company in a positive light. And you might now say, oh, so Julian, you've been going on about Epic using persuasive and manipulative marketing strategies to sell their products. Why do you have such a big problem with that? And the thing is, that's not the issue that I want to point out. See, the issue at hand isn't about blaming them for using nostalgia or their persuasive methods or whatever, right? It's a standard practice for all companies. It's like a basic recipe for getting someone to buy a product, as without this, nobody would really have any motivation to buy anything outside of basic survival necessities. My concerns are more on Epic's side of things, as I'm more focused on the potential desensitization of the player base over time. The more one engages with Season OG, the less enjoyment one will experience, and revisiting specific memories of the Chapter 1 map tends to lose its emotional intensity and stimulation. Gradually or subconsciously, one may associate Chapter 1 with encountering skilled players that have never in their fucking life touched grass, bugs because Epic probably just ported the map into the game, and most importantly, the loss of the initial excitement. As the brain undergoes repeated stimulation, the response of the stimulus diminishes over time. Because our brains are wired in such a way to identify and selectively ignore irrelevant or familiar events, such as experiencing stimulation, there is a risk that people will become gradually desensitized to Season OG, which would be detrimental for Epic in the long run, as those who have returned for Season OG might not find it as engaging over time and may leave with a less favorable impression on both the game and the nostalgia they had for Chapter 1. So if their value of the nostalgia has diminished, they won't have a reason to come back to this game at all. Now, of course, desensitization works differently for everyone, as there are some factors that have to be taken into consideration. It depends on how much you've played Fortnite, if you've burnt out, how much your brain can revisit a specific memory before it gets desensitized, so on and so forth. I think the best analogy that I can give you guys is, think of a favorite joke that you have. The first time you hear it, it's hilarious, but if you keep repeating it over and over, explaining it to everyone, the humor will quickly wear off, and it might not be as funny anymore. So sometimes, it's better to leave a joke as a great memory, rather than repeating it over and over again.
What the hell is this?
Hey, real quick, I know we have a sausage party going on at this channel and everything, but 76% of you are not subscribed to this channel, so if you liked the video so far, then like the video and consider subscribing and turning on the bell so you can be notified whenever I upload a video. Usually when concepts like time travel come into play, whether it would be a movie, show, TV series, or video game, it usually is a fucking disaster since it has been done to death by multiple mediums. Some may have done it better than the others, and more often than not, contradictions and plot holes may arise. The problem with the Chapter 4 storyline is that the seasons barely connect at all. People like the ageless champion who seem to be extremely powerful get killed off screen by a fucking Fortnite crew skin, and the whole Chapter 4 just makes no sense storyline-wise. Why were characters like Triac, Nox, and Serenade introduced as a major plot point only to instantly disappear? Why was Optimus Prime introduced only to tell us that we were in danger and f*** right off? And other than seeking artifacts from the past, what was Cato Thorne's true intentions? Was he the Shapeless Man? I don't know. I mean, I don't think we ever found out who the Shapeless Man was. Correct me if I'm wrong. Now we get thrown into seasonog, which only tells us vaguely through the audio tapes from Dr. Sloan that we are in the past of an alternate universe, and whatever we do from this point onward will alter the future. This is more commonly known as the butterfly effect. Whatever actions we do in the past, even the smallest actions such as taking a single step backwards, it can drastically change the future, which has already happened, seeing how Kevin, the cube, is still alive and floating above the vault. He hasn't exploded yet. This kind of circles back to my first point. The lore, as well as many other things in this game, just lack originality. As now, any mistake that Epic has done while writing the lore of Chapter 4 can be simply explained with, oh no, you see, it was just Cato going back in time to collect artifacts that made the chapter and seasons go in the wrong order. Furthermore, we haven't really had any live events for almost a year, and the entirety of Chapter 4, which raises concerns. I mean, think about it. Live events were a part of what made Fortnite stand out as a whole. A one-time event that you were never able to witness again. And even then, the Fracture event was a disaster. Heck, I even called it in my previous videos that the live event and Chapter 4 as a whole felt rushed. And here we are, at the end of 2024, with 4 seasons into Chapter 4 and no live events. Sure, we might get a live event at the end of Season OG, but that doesn't mean we can't ignore the fact that we haven't had a live event for almost a year. Adding to this complexity, data miners have uncovered that 2 seasons from Chapter 4 were initially intended for Chapter 3, Mega Chapter 4 Season 2, and Wild Chapter 4 Season 3, which leads me to believe that Chapter 4 as a whole shouldn't have existed in the first place. This whole new chapter was made driven by the need to meet their yearly chapter quota to sustain relevance, possibly at the expense of the storyline itself, so bringing back the Chapter 1 map just risks further confusion to an already convoluted narrative, in my personal opinion. Ultimately though, I would say that the Chapter 4 lore, heck, Fortnite's storyline as we know it, has been massively neglected. And you can clearly tell that Donald Mustard had no part in Chapter 4 story writing at all. This honestly really sucks, since I've always looked at the Fortnite storyline as this amazing, complex story that, while being convoluted, it made sense all the way from Chapter 1 to Chapter 3 Season 3, I would say. If I had it my way, I would have forced them to stay on Chapter 3. Continuing from there, after the Fracture event, the map would be damaged but not completely destroyed, and then we could fill it later in with either the Oathbound Kingdom or Mega City, and then we could do Wild later on, Chapter 3 Season 6, and so on and so forth. Then the whole time travel thing might have made a bit more sense, and possibly kept the storyline at bay. So the last thing I wanted to talk about in this video is commitment, and don't worry, unlike the other categories, I won't keep you here for long. Of course, commitment being defined as the state or dedication to a particular cause or activity. With this in mind, let me ask you this. How many original players do you think will stay after Season OG? 90%? 50%? 30%? Because truth to be told, these players came back for only that, the original seasons. So once Epic starts changing the map, completely revamping the map into Chapter 5, changing the meta, adding back collaboration mythics, or any other change, game mechanic, or weapons that will drastically alter the game, make it more difficult or unbearable, then the player base they've gathered will just vanish for the most part, as they aren't committed enough for the long run. In addition, we also have to take into consideration that back in 2018, when everyone was 12 or 13 years old, are probably now in college, some have jobs or other real-life responsibilities that gives them less time to focus on playing the game. Furthermore, growing up also affects the games you play as your preference changes. Not everyone who played Fortnite back in 2018 will still want to play when their preference has shifted more into something realistic like Call of Duty Warzone. Or heck, they could have switched genres completely to games like Rainbow Six Siege or FIFA. It all depends on the personal preference of the player. Now of course, Epic cannot control the personal preference of other people, alright? If someone grows out of Fortnite, they grow out of Fortnite. If someone doesn't like the cartoonish harsh art style of Fortnite, then that's their preference. If someone doesn't like Fortnite as a whole, that's also their preference. I think that the only way original players will stay and commit to the game to a certain degree is if they either keep the game simple while releasing new content, or release OG Fortnite as a separate game mode, since people would really stick around for that. And knowing Epic grasps for any kind of short-term relevance, I don't see that as an unreasonable alternative for them to take. Heck, I would personally love to see every season and chapter map with the exact weapon rotation from said season or chapter come back as a separate game mode. It would be amazing, since people who enjoyed Chapter 2 Season 2 can go back to Chapter 2 Season 2. People who enjoyed Chapter 3 Season 2 can go back to Chapter 3 Season 2, so on and so forth. I understand why Epic wouldn't want to do this, since people would probably be less encouraged to try out, say, Chapter 5 Season 1 compared to them queuing Chapter 1 Season 5. But it would encourage many to commit to the game. Ultimately, I believe Epic has achieved something truly impressive with this season, which has resonated with numerous individuals, myself included. They successfully infused the game with a sense of nostalgia, drawing back many players over the weekend, reaching an astonishing 44.7 million players. 44.7 million players just to even check the map out, which is amazing. However, it is hard to overlook the reality that this rendition is merely a shell of what Chapter 1 once represented, as there have been some small, notable differences that subtly fractured the immersion. Gone are the days of defaults not knowing how to build, locations that felt even mystical, like a distant dream to visit, skins you feared seeing in-game, like the Skull Trooper or Gold Trooper, signified some kind of status, that you've been there from the beginning. Now, instead of defaults, we have bots running around, we have locations that look similar but they're not exactly the same, and the only skins you fear now are not the OG skins, but the sweat skins, the skins that are worn by people who play this game for 100 hours a week plus. Season OG really, in my personal opinion, just looks like a big marketing strategy than anything else, since they did this at a point in time where it would be the most financially viable to Epic. If you got this far into the video, you may think that I hate Fortnite, and the truth is, I really don't. I don't hate Fortnite. That's why I called this video The Problems with Fortnite Season OG. Not why I hate Fortnite Season OG, or here is why Fortnite Season OG sucks. And it's because I want to point out the problems with Fortnite Season OG. This season, while it seems perfect, will have huge consequences in the long term. This season obviously lacked originality, may have some players desensitized to the OG season, making their nostalgic memories lose its value, and thus giving them less interest in the game itself. The lore is a total mess right now that not even the current Season OG can fix, and I doubt that many original players will commit to this game long term after Season OG. And sure, we might get a live event this season, but that's ignoring the fact that we haven't had a live event for a whole year. And while this whole season may feel like a nice trip through memory lane, I can't help but notice Epic desperately trying to grasp for short-term relevance from their original player base to keep their attention in the game. What I think was the absolute biggest problem with Fortnite Season OG is that you can make everything the same. The map changes, the weapon pool, the quests, and everything the same. And it just wouldn't hit the same way. See, many of us that play Fortnite struggle with that longing for the good old days and hoping that after each season or chapter that Fortnite will return to such a state. But alas, once we do, it is not that perfect of a utopia that people made it out to be. Hopefully, whatever Epic has in store for us from this point onward, it could be Season OG or Chapter 5, I hope for the best outcome of this game. And I genuinely believe that Chapter 1 should have been left as a great memory rather than revisiting it as Season OG. But what do I know? I'm just a lemur apparently, so